The studio lights were so bright they seemed to pierce the air, making every expression, every flicker of emotion impossible to hide. Millions were watching. Donald Trump stood center stage, voice booming, confident as always. Cameras panned to the audience, leaders, journalists, and citizens from around the world. Then it happened. J.D. Vance, seated just a few feet from Trump, slowly rose to his feet. His hands rested on the desk, his jaw set. "I support Captain Ibrahim Traoré," he said, voice steady, clear, echoing through the silent studio. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Then a sharp gasp rippled through the room, not from one person, but from dozens. Trump's eyes locked on Vance, his expression tightening, disbelief twisting into something darker. Ibrahim Traoré sat calmly at the far end of the table, his posture straight, his eyes unshaken. Somewhere in the crowd, a pen clattered to the floor. Reporters leaned forward. The betrayal was public, undeniable, and irreversible. No one knew what would happen next. But they knew the world had just changed. Trump's hand twitched against the podium. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. The entire room, diplomats, press, producers, was still frozen in the aftershock of J.D. Vance's declaration. Traoré didn't move, didn't blink. His eyes carried a quiet strength that felt older than the walls around them. The kind of strength that comes from battles fought far away from bright lights and polished floors. "J.D.," Trump finally said, his voice strained, "you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," Vance replied, his tone unshaken. "It's time we acknowledge the courage, the sacrifice, and the leadership Ibrahim Traoré has shown, even when it meant standing alone." A camera zoomed in on Traoré's face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He was simply present, grounded in the storm that had just erupted. Somewhere in the control room, a producer whispered, "This is going global." In living rooms and offices around the world, people leaned closer to their screens. Some cheered silently. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But no one could look away. The studio's tension was no longer invisible. You could almost see it hanging in the air like heat waves. Trump's gaze hardened. "You do realize," he said slowly, "what you're saying is betrayal." Vance didn't flinch. "No, it's truth." The words landed heavy. The room was so quiet that the faint hum of the studio lights felt deafening. On the far side, a reporter scribbled furiously, glancing up between each line. Photographers shifted lenses. This was history in the making. Traoré finally spoke. His voice was calm, deep, deliberate. "I did not come here to cause division. I came to speak for my people. If my presence divides, perhaps the truth was fragile to begin with." There was no anger in his tone, only an unshakable dignity. For a moment, even Trump was silent. Somewhere, deep in the audience, an elderly woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. She had lost a son in a war few spoke of. She knew the kind of leader she was seeing in front of her. And though no one said it out loud, everyone in the room knew. This was far from over. The silence didn't last. A low murmur rolled through the audience like the first rumble of a coming storm. Some clapped softly. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Trump's jaw tightened. His voice was low, but each word carried weight. "J.D., you just ended your career." Vance didn't blink. "Then I end it standing for what's right." A ripple of gasps spread again. Cameras darted between the three men, Trump's rigid posture, Vance's unflinching stance, and Traoré's composed calm. Traoré finally turned his head toward Vance, a faint nod acknowledging the gesture. It wasn't approval nor surprise, just quiet respect. In homes across America and Africa, millions were glued to their screens. The chat feeds exploded with comments. Stand with Traoré began to trend before the commercial break even hit. In the studio, a stage assistant accidentally knocked over a cup of water, shattering the fragile silence. Everyone knew this was no longer a regular broadcast. This was the kind of moment history books talk about. And the night was still young. As Trump regained the microphone, his tone shifted from disbelief to something sharper. "You think this man is a hero?" he said, motioning toward Traoré. "You know nothing about the deals, the danger, the—" He stopped mid-sentence. The producers, sensing a PR disaster, cut his microphone for a moment. In that pause, Traoré spoke. His words were measured, his accent steady. "I have no quarrel with the American people, but I will not apologize for protecting my land, my people, and my future. If that makes me the enemy, so be it." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some were holding back tears without knowing why. There was something in his tone, in the way he carried pain quietly, that struck deep. Vance's eyes didn't leave Traoré. "The truth is, I've seen what he's done when cameras weren't around. I've seen the villages he's rebuilt, the children he's fed, the peace he's held with nothing but his word." Trump's glare could have cut through steel. The room knew this wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. Before Trump could retake control of the narrative, a voice from the far end of the stage broke in. It was one of the foreign correspondents, a veteran journalist with lines of experience etched into her face. "Mr. Traoré," she said softly, "can you tell us about the night in Ouagadougou?" The room shifted again. Even the name carried weight. Traoré's gaze lowered for the first time that evening. "That night," he began slowly, "I watched mothers carry their children through fire. I carried bodies, some still breathing, some not. I promised myself I would never let my people face that alone again." His voice never cracked, but the silence in the room felt like grief itself. J.D. Vance's hand tightened into a fist on the desk. Trump leaned back, studying him, trying to understand why he'd chosen this hill to stand on. In the control booth, the director whispered to a cameraman, "Stay tight on his face. The world needs to see this." And somewhere in that bright, unforgiving studio, the first tears fell. The studio's bright lights couldn't hide the shadows behind Traoré's eyes. The camera held tight on his face as he began to speak softly, almost like confessing a secret. "Before I became a leader, I was a soldier," he said. "I saw things no child should see. Friends lost, families broken. I carried the weight of every life I couldn't save." His voice wavered slightly, the first crack in his calm exterior. He paused, swallowing hard. "Every day, I wake up with their faces in my mind. It's a pain I carry silently." The audience leaned closer. Even Vance's usually steady gaze softened for a moment. Trump's expression flickered, irritation mixed with confusion. He opened his mouth to interrupt, but something in Traoré's honesty held him back. Across the globe, viewers felt the pain too. In quiet homes, in crowded cafes, tears quietly rolled down cheeks. This wasn't just politics anymore. It was human. The betrayal was painful, but so was the man behind it, a man who fought for hope in a world that often forgot it existed. Suddenly the studio's tension felt electric, like a storm gathering momentum. Vance stood again, this time with a voice full of conviction. "People want to know why I betrayed my party," he said. "It's because Traoré is fighting a battle we all must see, a battle for dignity, peace, and a future." Whispers echoed in the room. Journalists scribbled rapidly. Cameras zoomed closer. Traoré's eyes met Vance's. There was an unspoken bond, forged not in words, but in shared struggles. Trump's face tightened, his voice sharpened. "You're turning your back on your own. This is a dangerous game." Vance smiled, a mix of sadness and resolve. Sometimes doing what's right means standing alone. The audience felt the weight of those words. Many were on the edge of their seats. Some wiped away tears. The broadcast wasn't just news anymore. It was a story of courage, of breaking chains, of hope born from pain. The moment stretched, electric and raw. Millions of eyes across continents remained glued to the screen. Traoré's calm voice cut through the tension. I don't seek fame or glory. I seek peace for my people. I seek a chance for children to dream without fear. He looked beyond the cameras, beyond the bright lights, as if speaking directly to those who had lost so much. A soft murmur rose in the crowd. Some reached for tissues. Vance stepped closer to the microphone. If we ignore this truth, if we deny his courage, then we betray our own humanity. Trump's silence was deafening. The air thickened. Outside the studio, social media exploded. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hearts connected across oceans. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And for millions, tears flowed. Tears of hope, pain, and the promise of something new. Traoré's voice softened as he spoke. His eyes distant, but filled with fierce determination. When my son was born, I promised him a future without fear. He paused, swallowing the weight of memory. I promised him he would grow up safe, free to laugh, to dream. But that promise, it's harder than I imagined. In the studio, some viewers whispered prayers. Others had tears rolling quietly down their cheeks. Vance nodded, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. This is not just politics. It's a father's love, a leader's courage. It's the fight to keep a promise to the next generation. Trump's glare was sharp, but even he couldn't deny the raw truth in those words. Millions watching at home felt something break open inside, a mixture of hope, sadness, and respect. It was a moment when the world paused, watching a man not just speak, but bare his soul. And through the studio's bright lights, the weight of those promises hung heavy, a silent call for change. The camera cut to the audience, capturing faces lit with emotion. Some were wiping away tears discreetly, while others held hands tightly, hearts pounding. In that moment, politics melted away, replaced by something far more human: pain, hope, and the longing for peace. Traoré's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. I lost friends, brothers in arms. I lost mothers who begged for mercy. His voice cracked just a little. I've carried those losses with me every day. Vance's fist clenched, his jaw tight. That pain, it is real. It is why we cannot turn away now. Trump's silence spoke volumes. Even he could feel the weight of the room, the gravity of a story too powerful to ignore. Millions across the globe watched in stunned quiet, some crying openly, others sitting frozen, hearts aching. This wasn't just a broadcast. It was a call, a cry for justice, for understanding, for change. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. But then, something unexpected happened. J.D. Vance stepped closer to Traoré, his voice steady, but filled with respect. Captain, your courage has shaken this room, and it has shaken the world. Traoré looked at Vance, a faint smile breaking through his solemn expression. Trump shifted in his seat, unease flickering in his eyes for the first time that night. Vance continued, We may come from different worlds, but tonight we stand together for what matters: truth, honor, and hope. The studio erupted in applause, some standing, many wiping tears away. Across continents, people felt the weight of this alliance. Fragile, unexpected, but powerful. And for millions watching, hope blossomed quietly, a light shining in the darkness, promising a better tomorrow. The studio lights cast sharp shadows as Traoré stood quietly, letting the applause wash over him without a word. His calmness was like a rock amid a storm, unshaken, steady, powerful. Vance stepped back, eyes locked on Traoré with a mix of respect and awe. "Sometimes," he said softly, "true strength is found not in shouting, but in silent resolve." Trump's face tightened, his hands gripping the table, struggling to regain control. But the room no longer belonged to him. Millions of viewers felt the weight of that silence, the weight of a man who had faced horrors and never let them break his spirit. In living rooms and cafes, strangers shared glances, their hearts quietly moved by the image on screen. Traoré's story wasn't just politics. It was survival. It was hope. And in that silence, the world understood something important. Courage is sometimes quiet, but always loud enough to change everything. Traoré's voice returned softer now, but filled with a raw honesty. "My country has suffered. We have cried, lost, and hoped." His eyes scanned the crowd, resting on faces heavy with emotion. Every tear shed was a promise that we will not give up, that we will rise. In the studio, tears rolled down cheeks, even among the toughest journalists. The audience sat in stunned silence, feeling the weight of those simple words. Vance nodded solemnly. "This is a man fighting not for power, but for people. For children who deserve to dream without fear." Trump's scowl deepened, but no one was listening to him anymore. Outside, across continents, families gathered around screens, hearts beating in quiet unity with the man on the stage. It was more than a broadcast. It was a shared moment of humanity, fragile but unbreakable. The air in the studio grew thick. Vance looked straight at Trump, voice steady, unwavering. "Tonight we face a truth too long ignored." Traoré's gaze met Vance's, their shared resolve lighting the room. "The world has watched me fight in silence. Now it must listen." Trump's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The cameras captured every flicker of emotion. Millions watching felt the moment deepen, the quiet before a storm, the turning point between fear and hope. Vance's voice rose slightly. "This isn't betrayal. It's courage. It's standing for what's right, even when it costs everything." The studio erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. Tears fell freely now, as viewers everywhere felt the raw power of this moment. It was more than a broadcast. It was history in the making. The room was heavy with emotion. Traoré's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he took a slow, steady breath. "I stand here not just as a leader, but as a son, a father, and a man who has witnessed too much pain," he said softly. "Each loss, each battle, has shaped who I am, but it has never broken me." His voice cracked for a moment, raw and real. "I fight for a future where my children can sleep without fear, where their laughter can fill the streets instead of silence." In that moment, time seemed to still. The studio lights felt warmer, softer, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Vance reached out, placing a hand lightly on Traoré's shoulder. "This is the courage we all need to see." Trump's face was unreadable, but the room was united. This was no longer about politics or betrayal. It was about humanity. Fragile, painful, yet unbreakably strong. Millions watched, some crying openly, others quietly moved by the courage before them. Vance stepped forward, voice steady and full of conviction. "Tonight, we witnessed something extraordinary, a truth that transcends borders and politics." He turned to Traoré, eyes shining. "Your strength reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand despite it." The audience rose to their feet, applause ringing out like thunder. Tears flowed freely, not just for pain, but for hope, for the possibility of change. In living rooms and streets worldwide, strangers reached out to one another, united by a shared moment of humanity. Trump finally spoke, quieter, more measured. Maybe there is something worth listening to tonight. It wasn't a concession. It was something more subtle. The first crack in a wall long thought unbreakable. And through the bright studio lights, one thing was clear. The world was watching, learning, and beginning to believe. As the broadcast ended, Traoré stood tall, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. Outside the studio, a crowd had gathered, faces lit by screens showing the historic moment they had just witnessed. "This is only the beginning," Traoré whispered to Vance. "For my people, for all people." The sun rose the next day, a new dawn bathed in possibility. Stories of hope spread across continents. Millions felt the power of one man's courage to inspire a world tired of division and fear. And to you watching now, remember this moment. If Traoré's story moved you, if it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Share your thoughts, your tears, your hope. Because together we carry the light forward. And together we change the world.